I'm Randy Rohde, and I'm fascinated with entrepreneurs and small business owners. Plus, I love baseball. Every show, I sit down with a small business owner, and we discuss their running the bases of entrepreneurship. We throw the ball around on strategy, management, execution, and innovation. Plus, a little fun baseball talk. Hey, thanks for joining us today. Settle in, grab your Cracker Jacks, and you know what they say.
Play ball.
And it's a great day for a ball game. Hey, thanks for joining us today. This is Randy Rohde, and you've got Running the Bases with Small Businesses. Today's guest, I think you're in for a great show today because we got a lot of firsts going on here. Today's guest grew up playing competitive golf. Raised in Fort Lauderdale, her parents would buy her plane tickets and send her all over the country playing in tournaments. She had a very successful golf career as a student athlete, and she went on to play 1 year professionally in the LPGA. But after realizing playing golf for money wasn't going to be her forever career, she went back to school, earning her master's in accounting and becoming a CPA. She spent many years as a successful CPA in large firms in the Boston area, often sitting in meetings, realizing didn't love the impersonal nature of the big agencies. So her confidence and drive that she learned playing golf kicked in, and she left the big agency world, founding her own boutique accounting agency in 2015, where she is rewriting some of the accounting rules. I hope not, really, but I think you can get into trouble for that. So, hey, welcome to the show, the founder and principal of the Largo Group, Ann Gannon. Ann, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, I got my creative team member here that writes all of our stuff for us. And yeah, like rewriting the accounting rules. Like, I don't think she's rewriting any of it. She better not be, man, because wow. So there's so many things I want to talk with you about even before we get into the Largo Group. But, we'll weave some of this stuff in and out, I guess. But I got to hit on the stuff first about golf. And I'm sure we'll come back to this from time to time here in our moments together. So you went to Rutgers. I don't know if I read that in the intro even. You went to Rutgers for 1 year, right? And I'm guessing that was before they were in the Big Ten. Is that right? Okay.
We were Big East.
Okay.
Yeah,
Not that you look fabulous, but I'm like, I think that was just in the last 5 years maybe or so. So
right. No.
Yeah.
Football.
Okay.
So yes.
Well, don't worry about that. So yeah, so you went to Rutgers, and I want to hit on this because I want to be sure that people understand, you were quite good. And maybe you still are good, not to say past tense. You're an incredible golfer. And if I have this right in the show notes, so in 2000, while you were at Rutgers, you were the ECAC, the Eastern College Athletics Conference Women's Golf Champion. Is that right?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Impressive. Out of 115 golfers in that conference. And then following your college career, you should have baseball cards for you as a golfer. I don't even know if they have those things for LPGA golfers. That would be great. We should strike that up as a new venture. But following your career, then you went down to Florida. I've got this in my notes. Where was that? Atlantic? Yeah, Florida Atlantic. And I'm guessing you transferred. I'm sure there's all kinds of reasons, but if you're a golfer, I'm guessing the quality of competition, the frequency of competition is just much richer in, December, January than it is in New Jersey, right?
Yes,
At Rutgers. So nothing against, I like New Jersey, but I'm not playing golf in January there. So you went down to Florida, and I think my research person goes, I think she won this in 2000 something. So here's a question mark. She couldn't necessarily confirm, but I'll ask you this, were you the Florida Women's Amateur Champion?
So I was runner-up to Florida. I know, but I won my biggest season was my senior year of college. and I won the Women's Eastern Golf Championship, which is one of the top 5 in the country. So with that, as well as just playing a ton and doing well in
Look
other
at
tournaments, I
you.
was ranked 11th in the country my senior year.
Wow. That
So
is
that was,
impressive.
yeah.
All right. So then you decide, hey, at some point you're going to go and you play in the Futures. I think I've got it somewhere. The Futures tournament or something like that. What do they call that?
Yeah, so the Futures Tour, which is the feeder tour
Yes.
to the LPGA, I was actually had my card with them for 2 seasons and played a full season
Okay.
after graduating.
Right. So here's a little fun story. Maybe you can highlight some of this. So unbeknownst to you, from what I understand, you actually, while you were on the amateur circuit, you got paired with a young 12-year-old golf prodigy. And from what I understand, you beat her as well. So,
Yes.
you wouldn't take it easy on a 12-year-old, but a 12-year-old Michelle Wee.
Yes. Yeah.
Pretty awesome today.
Funniest golf stories, because I was not playing very well that week and had barely qualified in most amateur tournaments, like the top 64, sort of like NCAA make the championship bracket. I think I was like 61 seed, barely made it. Then everyone was talking about this 12-year-old and, the buzz was around, but I hadn't looked by design, never looked at like the paper back then or, anything out there, just sort of had my blinders on. And my husband now, my boyfriend at the time, was caddying for me. And so it's like a Tuesday afternoon in Lincoln, Nebraska. And who comes to watch women's golf anyway? Which is fine. And we have like 50 people watching our group. And first of all, she was like 6 feet tall. So right away, I'm like, oh, thank God I didn't get the 12-year-old. And we start playing and like these people are not leaving our group. Like they're not going to watch the other group. So I look to Steve, my boyfriend's kind of like, what is going on? No one ever watches our matches. And he's like, everybody knows that like the 61st seed is always the upset. And I'm like, are you sure? Like, I watch sports. Like, I don't know that that's...
Is that a thing, really? I don't know.
No, it's not a thing at all. But he's like, just trying to get me to calm down. He's like, no, everybody knows this is like the thing. And I'm like, okay, like, fine, So we ended up playing a match. I had birdied 18 and then the first playoff hole to win the match. And then, of course, realized that it was, Michelle Wee and all of that. So, yeah, that was a crazy day.
That is great. Now, and I'm sure you're still like great friends with her and keep in touch.
She's not very happy to lose to me. Neither were her parents. So, yeah.
That's great. That is a good story. So what is that like as a student athlete? And I'm always amazed by some of these guys. I've talked with guys, football players, and that played at college and just their world. But I mean, as a golfer, because these are not just, and maybe they're different tournaments and, than what they are in pro. Like, I don't know, but in the pro, you show up and you start playing on Thursday and you're there for 4 days playing in tournaments. Is that the same way in college? I mean, and then are you traveling all over the country to play?
Oh, yeah. I think golf as a sport for young adults is probably one of the best in terms of life lessons, because you really have to learn a lot about yourself because you're not with a team. As early as like 16, I was flying around. My parents were arranging like private housing. We think about it now, and it was like, here, we're just going to drop you off at the airport. Someone in Oklahoma is going to pick you up, and it's okay because you're going to stay at their house for 7 days, and you could just call us, and here's some money. And you're like, jeez. Okay, see you later. And, it really is such a weird situation. And, my parents didn't have a lot of money, so it wasn't really like all of us can go. It really was, and I think especially back then, and one of the things I try to be involved with now is amateur golf, because just the fact that there were people who were willing to put us up in private housing and willing to help us, I wouldn't have been able to go otherwise. But it really was a community thing to where, the course that was hosting was trying to make the players welcome, make sure that they knew where to go. And so you're really in these towns or cities by yourself learning, like, I need to go talk to the pro because he's probably going to talk to me more than the members are. And I need to know where to go. And, you learned so many amazing golf lessons and life lessons of just, how to be resilient and how to just figure things out on your own. And so, that's the golf journey.
It sounds like an incredible experience. I think as well, I've got in some notes here that you are quoted as stating that golf is more stressful than work for you. Is
Yes.
that right?
Yes. And I would actually say that I proved that true because on Sunday, like I've sort of gotten into like playing a little bit, but just like in my club or, our course
Okay.
nearby. And I played in the club championship and I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? I think I'd be much happier just going to do accounting for the day. Like it's incredibly stressful.
How did you do?
I won on
Oh,
18.
yes.
This is hard.
All right. Yes, another little jewel in your crown, I guess. And I actually have this as well. In August, evidently, you played in a tournament with your son. So,
Yes,
and
you
you
have a
won
great
that, and you
researcher.
won that as well.
Yeah, which was fun. My 10-year-old.
You
Yes,
better get back
very
out on the tour and earn some coin, I think. Man, good for you. All right. So now let's swing into it. So at some point you decided, and as we said in the intro, at a point you decided that playing on the tour was not going to be your forever career thing. I guess what I'm curious, at what point or when did that begin to matriculate and you begin to entertain doing something else? And then why accounting? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what you majored in college. It's probably in my notes and I'm just being doof and not looking at it. But why accounting? Of all of the things, like I actually like golf. A lot of people think golf is boring. I kind of think it's kind of fun to watch the tournaments on TV anyway. I don't play golf, so I don't. I'm that guy that goes out once a year and just like
Right.
destroys a course. But accounting, I'm like, I definitely would not be an accountant either.
Right.
So I don't know. So I'm throwing all kinds of questions at you. When you're on the tour, when did you begin to think, I'm not going to do this as my forever thing? And then why accounting?
Yeah, so I think, my senior year of college, I played well, kind of, had been around a lot of the top players at the time and, really wanted to give it a shot just because I did love golf. What I loved about golf was really, and what I still love about golf is the process, right? Like you can go out and you try to get better every day and it's very statistical and very analytical. So it really doesn't matter who you're playing against. Like your game is what it is and until you make it better. And that was always something that I found was really easy to drive myself to get better, that it's really not necessarily what you're born with. It's whoever works the hardest will usually do the best. You have some natural talent, but for the most part, hard work pays off in golf. And so when I got out on the tour, what I realized is as much as I loved the journey of it, that, I really wanted to find something that was challenging myself mentally. And really what I realized is playing golf is, unless you really love like the game and like the swing and like where your club head is at the top, like that, it's very mentally like interesting to people who are like true golfers. And I was never a true golfer. Like even now, like my husband gets so mad because we've known each other for like 20 years and I've never looked at his swing and given him a tip because I just don't think that way. And so what I realized is my favorite part of the journey was going to all these towns, like meeting all these people. And it was an amazing experience because when you're in private housing, a lot of the time you're staying with people who own their own business, like entrepreneurs, people who've come from nothing and have created, something. And that was always fascinating to me because, my parents didn't have a lot, but you're talking to people who had similar career paths where it was like, I just opened this restaurant and now I have 5 locations and really had made themselves. And that is what I loved. And so to me, it was like, well, let's go find something that I truly enjoy doing every day. And, I think one of the hardest conversations I've ever had was with my swing coach because we had worked for years and years to get to that point. I hadn't had a great first year on tour, but most people would have gone back and said, okay, what do we need to work on? Here's
Right,
year 2.
right.
But I just felt in my gut that if I don't love the idea of going back, why am I going to waste 2-3 years? Because I need to go find what I love to do. And
Right.
so it was really hard to say, like, I'm done after year 1. And he's like, what? No, 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 no. And I'm like, I mean, I just know in my heart that that's what I want to go try to do, something different. And so one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was from an accounting instructor who I had known actually from, working part-time at a golf course. And when I was starting to really think like, all right, I don't think going back on tour is what I want to do. I'm not really sure what I want to do. And she was the one who told me, accounting is just like golf. It's a skill. and you
Mm.
just have to go learn it. And, there's plenty of jobs out there. There's so many things you can do with it. But if you approach it the same way golf is, where you just have to go learn it and you'll get better at it, then, you'll be able to do whatever you want. So that was what I did. And she kind of helped me figure out that undergrad was economics, but I had taken a lot of accounting
Right.
courses. And so she kind of helped me figure out my schedule of like, it's better to go get your master's in accounting than go back and get another undergrad. And then pretty quickly, I was kind of going out into the accounting world. But I had come from such a different
Right.
place that when you started to see like the big firms and how they run and people who've dreamt of being accountants their whole life, I'm like, well, this isn't really me either because my background is so different from you guys that, that was where you started thinking about entrepreneurial side of accounting was
Right.
really where to
Right.
go.
So I love that quote, by the way, that counting is life, golf is like golf. And that's probably why I avoid both, because I really am not good at either of them. So you get your CPA, you move and you join one of these big, large firms in Boston, right? What was that experience like? I can only imagine. I mean, you see stuff on TV, like, oh, this is like the power lawyer, the power accounting group,
Yes.
right? And that just in having this short conversation with you already, I'm like, I don't think that's her. That does
Nope.
not seem like this girl.
No. Yeah, I mean, it was a crazy time because I actually finished my master's in December of 2007. So when I hired in was right before the financial crisis of
Mm.
2008.
Mm-hmm.
So within like 6 months of hiring in, there was no work for anyone. And right away, you started to hear stories of, well, hiring classes just get fired and, they
Oh,
just eliminate, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, what? Like,
wait, I
this
just
is
got.
not what I thought was going to happen. And, and then everyone who'd done internships, like they had a lot more experience than I
Right,
did. So
right.
what I realized was that all of the partners play golf. And so I had to do networking and very quickly realized our managing partner was a huge golfer. And
Uh,
so kind of like right away kind of slipped that in like, oh, what driver do you have? Oh, that's interesting, And so the time that I was there, again, one of the great life experiences was he would bring me out because a lot of our clients had women who played and there
sure,
were no other
sure.
women in our firm that played. So that didn't make a lot of my managers happy that I'm the one going to all like the partner events, but it was a great life experience to really learn like the networking side
Oh,
and,
yeah.
meeting people outside of work and getting to know them.
Yeah.
And so, that was my work until I realized that I really wanted to do it on my own.
Yeah. Well, good for you. And at some point, then, yeah. So you decided you wanted to break away from the large firms and go out on your own. And so now we're at the Largo Group. So tell us about the Largo Group. Give us the full story.
Yeah, I mean, what I realized with the big firms was just that, that model really is not beneficial to clients, right? Like it's beneficial for the firm and they have certain, revenue goals and all of that. The whole model is around, what they call billable hours. So
Mm.
the less time you spend on the job, the better for the firm. But when you're starting to realize who's behind the tax return, especially, these are real people. And I think, my background having known so many small business owners from the journey in golf was like, this is someone's like life. This is not just, oh, they lost money last year, but they're really looking to us for more than just a tax return, but we can't give it because our model is set up to spend the least amount of time possible. And there's all
Mm.
these rules about what you can discuss. Well, they're not paying you to give you advice. Well, they don't know that, right? Like they just think they're paying a firm to do their work and they don't really understand all of the knowledge that we have in this building and why aren't we working together. And so, one of the biggest things to me was just, that was a bad time anyway in the economy. And you see so many people that are right on the brink of real catastrophe and we're not helping. And to me, that was like, what are we doing? Like, why are we here if we're not helping? And my dad had been an entrepreneur growing up and his business had failed. So seeing these businesses failing and the red numbers on the returns, I'm like, I don't feel good about going
Mm.
home every day at what I'm doing here. And I think that we have all of this knowledge. And if we can find a way to build a model where we can help and we can give advice and still do the tax return, like that's just a win for everyone. And so what I started to do was really kind of play with a couple of clients that I have good relationships with of just say like, what would this what would make this a win? Like if I sent you this report every month, if we
Right.
talked about this, because the other thing about accounting is it's always looking backwards. Like you're not really
Right.
ever asking, what do you think will happen next year? Or, what are you changing next year? And a lot of accountants really don't understand that small businesses change drastically from year to year, right? They could open a new location, they could hire a different salesperson who grows, like every year is not the same. Where in most, especially tax accounting, it's easy to say like, oh, this year is the same as last year. Like that doesn't exist in small
Right.
business. And
Right.
so you have to be open to understanding the changes and why they're changing. And, is the business getting better?
And as a business owner, and I've had several different businesses, and the thing that I valued in my accountants or my CFOs were more kind of what you're describing, that forward looking viewpoint. And especially when it came around cash flow, I'm like, okay, this is what we're thinking about. How will this impact our cash flow? It's like, it seems like this is going to work, but, is the timing of incoming going to match what our requirements are for outgoing? And yeah, so I can absolutely understand kind of your approach to that. So you started the Largo group then in 2016, going strong now. And so when you talk about your business model, so now do you do it? So you're not doing it, I'm assuming, on the billable hour, but rather than probably like a monthly retainer model. Is that right?
Yes. So, I had done accounting just on my own for a few years, before going to the Largo group. And what I realized was that, doing like some tax returns on the side and just
Right.
trying to like figure it out. And what I realized is you really have to come up with a very good understanding of the work that has to be done and a very clear understanding with the client, because the downside of a monthly retainer is expectation. Because
Right.
if you're just paying me for a tax return and I give you a tax return, but if you're going to pay me every month, like what are the things that you really expect me to do and
Right.
want from us? And so I think that really becomes very important in our model. And then we were monthly accounting and talking about cash flow, even before COVID. But when COVID hit, we changed our model to weekly. And what we realized, which was a huge aha moment, is as great as monthly is, there's always going to be like factors that that one month really isn't comparable to the next, right? Like you could have, say, 4th of July is in July. So comparing July to June, it's not really comparable because they're different days and there's different weekends, especially when you look at hospitality. So there's so much frustration, even when you give a monthly report, because someone says, well, of course I'm down from June. Everyone's away for 4th of July. So,
Right.
there's
Right.
always something. But if you really look weekly, you can always learn something about your model because every week is the same. And so you lose these excuses, which sometimes really are excuses because we don't want to see what's going on. And all of a sudden, you have a very clear picture of exactly what you need to bring in every week to make your cash flow work. So that was something that we transitioned to right away in COVID as just a way to get people to really understand, how bad is it? Okay, your sales are down 50%, but can you break even at 50%?
Right.
All of those things. And just being able to digest one week gave a lot of people a path forward during
So
those crazy times.
are you doing then weekly reporting is what you're doing with your clients?
Yeah.
That's great.
So we give a weekly report. It actually is a 4-week trend. It's the weekly P&L
Okay.
over the
Hmm.
last 4 weeks. So that way they can see monthly, right? Like you see one rent payment, but you also can see every week what those margins are.
That's a great idea. I love that idea. So, in today's world, then, so what are all of the services, I guess, and if you can, I don't know, laundry list of services, but so you're doing accounting. Are you doing, here's a term that really has gained popularity over the last few years, especially, but this fractional CFO kind of term or service. Do you guys do that?
Somewhat. So what I like to do is, again, my goal with our clients is to meet them where they are right now and find out where they want to go and provide that advice piece to get them there. So we don't
Hmm.
do consulting necessarily,
Mm,
but we do work on projects with them. If it's I want to open a new location in 6 months, or I want to expand or double or
right,
whatever it is.
right.
So what we've really transitioned to, especially during COVID, what we realized was that we have, having accountants on our team is amazing. Having that knowledge is incredible. But you also have people who can really understand what it is to run a business. So on our team now, we have a mix. We have our accounting team that's very technically savvy and knows all the rules of accounting, but we also have operations experts. So on our team, we also have, people who've been district managers, run 40 locations of
Hmm.
chains,
Hmm.
and, worked in the food service and all. So really understanding the operations part is critical, because I think so many times you can go to a financial expert or someone who's a CFO, but if they don't understand your industry, a lot of times the advice is flawed, because there's certain things you have to understand about your industry. So we definitely specialize in hospitality, and our experts are hospitality driven. And I think with that piece, our goal is to empower our clients to be able to do it themselves. Because the other piece of true consulting is, it was great when the consultant was here and now he's gone. So now we have to go pay him more money. We couldn't do it without him. And that, teach a person to
Sure,
fish, right?
sure.
Like, we want them to be able to do it with us as the team behind them.
Yeah, yeah. I would say from everything that I know in that world, even, it's a very thin line then between what you're stating that you are and this fractional CFO kind of world. Because I think it sounds like you're giving this great kind of consultative advice and working hand in hand with the entrepreneur, which is, I don't know, I love it. And that is one of those things I think as a small business owner, you'd always feel like I'm just kind of out here and hopefully I'm doing the right thing. And, but to have somebody in your corner that really knows the stuff and can be sure that you've got, shining light on all of the dark corners of your business, so to speak. Yeah. So it must be working well for you because you've expanded. Did you start in Boston and then you've expanded to Philadelphia? Did you start in Philadelphia and go to Boston? What did you do?
So we started in Boston, and then COVID time, I ended up moving to Philly. And
Okay.
so now we're in Philly.
All
So,
right.
but yeah, so we're in both places,
All
which
right.
is great.
So still yeah, so you've got offices in Boston and Philly, which is
Yes.
a lot of fun. So you've talked about earlier about your experience and your history with kind of the families and oftentimes entrepreneurs. I think I have in my notes here about comment maybe that you've made in regards to entrepreneurial. That is a hard word to spell out. I went to the dentist today, so I'm even more like, but something that you mentioned though is about always be curious or something to that effect in regards to thinking about your entrepreneurial path. I don't know. Maybe you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, so I think what happens a lot of time in entrepreneurs is that we get frustrated. Obviously, it's hard to be an entrepreneur. And, especially if things aren't working well or cash flow is tight. And I think what we have to understand is, when we look at our accounting, it really is the language of business. If you look at your P&L, it's telling a story about your business, but we have to understand that story and not be mad or be like, I've had people who say horrible things about themselves, like, oh, I'm just terrible. And I'm like, but no. Like, looking at your P&L, saying you're terrible, right? This is saying this is what happened last week. So let's figure out, like, is it that you're terrible, or is it that your chef ordered more? And if he ordered more, why did he order more? Maybe there was a reason he ordered more. So I think if we get rid of the negativity and the self-doubt and all of the horrible things we tell ourselves, and really look at it with a curious mind, what we're looking for is a pattern, right? Is your food cost high every week? Maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe our pricing isn't right, or our, sales we thought were going to be better than they are. And if that's the case, what could we do differently? As awful as COVID was, what I think was amazing during COVID, and I had an incredible experience of being truly front and center because of our model. I mean, we were flat fee monthly accounting with 90% of our clients' restaurants. So we were as in it as anyone. And I didn't know who would pay us in April 2020. So we spent, the first 6 to 12 months of COVID on the phone, probably 60 hours a week, every week, with people all over the country. And as awful as that time was, it was also incredibly eye-opening to the mindset of the entrepreneur and, what they think about. But I think what happened during COVID as one of the silver linings was people had to be curious, right? Like you knew people weren't going to come in your restaurant and sit down for a meal. And you also knew you needed X amount of dollars every week to make it work, right? So, and that was like our first thing with people was like, all right, do you need 20,000 a week? Do you need 30,000 a week? Like, what is it? And during those early week, it would be like, well, I need 30, like just to make my rent work, but I'm getting 8. Okay, so what do we have to do the rest of it? People were creative. They were curious. They were, okay, well, I think my customers want this. I mean, I had one guy who served like fine dining in downtown Philly, and he's like, if they want chicken tenders, I'm going to give them chicken tenders. But that same guy 6 months ago was like, what is this pretzel thing? Like, I'm not serving pretzels. It's like, but all of a sudden he's like, if they want pretzels, we can get pretzels. Like, I mean, same person.
Right.
And all of a sudden we're listening to our customers and we're engaging with them and we're, trying to provide what they want. And I think what is lesson there is why aren't we doing that now, right? Like if you know that your customer is price conscious, the answer isn't I'm raising my price and if they can't pay it, then that's it, right? Like that same approach had you win during these times because most of our clients who were able to do that, they didn't even just get back to normal. They actually grew their businesses.
Sure. Yeah. It's often, in those times of crisis, that forces you to have to like really be curious or really focus on your business. And those who rise up out of that often I find are better at what they do and often then end up performing better or getting better results coming through that experience. And I think even what it even sounded for you and with your firm is that it really allowed you as well to refine your offering and your unique solution that you provide through kind of this weekly engagement that you're doing with your clients and really probably made you a better organization as well.
Definitely. I mean, I think for us, like I said, 2019 had been such a crazy time for hospitality because people were doing so well that they really didn't care. I mean, the revenue was everything. It didn't really matter the bottom line because you always knew your revenue was going to grow from prior year. And so everybody had their eye off the ball going into 2020. And it was such a terrible time for 2020 to happen because of how much their eye had been off the ball in 19. And so for us in 19, it was hard to explain to people how important it was to do these things and tools that could make them better and all of that. I was like, well, I don't need to do that. I'm just going to open another location. And then, when 2020 hit, I think the lesson for me, I had never really looked at my background in golf. Like I'd always kind of said, well, this is new. This is and the CPA and the CPA is not and the golfer. And I just had never really put the two together. But in March 2020, I did. I realized like how much being a business owner is also about mindset because you could see how incredibly easy it would be to be angry and to be frustrated and feel like you've been handed a bad deal. And what you had to do is find a way to get past that feeling and move forward. And there were people who couldn't move forward. And it just reminded me so much of anyone who's played golf. Like golf is horrible. I mean, even playing with like my 8-year-old, he turned to me the other day, he goes, it doesn't feel good when you play bad. I'm like, I know it feels terrible, but like you have to find a way to get past this feeling and this anger at yourself and bad decisions and all of that. And you have to be able to look at the next shot, like the next play. And that was the exact same situation as business. Because if you couldn't look ahead and say, I just need $30,000 this week, and I don't care that I had 70,000 a month ago, like this is what I'm focused on. You could never get there. And those are the ones that couldn't make it. But the ones that could get there, I mean, it just was so insightful to where it was truly mindset over anything.
Yeah, that's a great lesson. And I love that your 8-year-old can tell you, can help teach you that. I was just going to ask you, that was kind of my next, I wanted to swing back into the golf world. You got that swing there. About other similarities about being an entrepreneur and being a professional athlete. You mentioned mindset, I think, and I'm a big fan about where your mindset is in helping push you forward. Anything else that comes to mind, similarities?
I think I would definitely say I think the standard that we hold ourselves to, I think in being an athlete, right, especially like college athlete or playing professionally, like you realize every hour of the day, every moment of the day, like it means something, right? From the moment you wake up, what's your morning routine and your pre-shot routine and going to the course and you're going to work out early, like all of that is so important. And, most of my conversations with my, swing coach in my, later years of college was all about that, right? Like once you get to a point of overwhelm, there's not much you can do. So everything you're doing throughout the day is to protect your mind so you don't feel overwhelmed and you're able to perform. And I think the other part that I really did not see until COVID is how true that is for business owners, especially in hospitality, because when you show up to your restaurant on a Friday night, like your mindset matters. If you walk in the door and you don't want to be there, like your team knows that. And when you walk in, you have to really look, you're taking the stage, right? You're taking the stage, not just as another person standing behind the bar, but you're taking the stage as the leader of this team. And how you've prepared that day, how you walk in that day, I mean, that makes a huge difference. And I think as business owners, it's easy to just be like, it's a bad week, or I'm kind of distracted. And you don't necessarily hold yourself to the same standard that you would. Because in golf, you can't. Like you're going to go, and if you're going to get a 10 on the first hole, if you're not ready. So, but there are some times where we kind of let ourselves off easy, or we're just, I'm not really feeling it. It's, Labor Day week. But if our result isn't where we want it to be, how much of that is also preparation as a leader?
Yeah. That's a good lesson. Wow. Well, we're going to dig more into golf and lessons in business and life, I think. But, Ann, it's that time.
And it's time for the 7th inning stretch.
Now, I asked Ann earlier before we hit the record button whether she liked baseball, and she really sparked up. She's like, I love baseball, which is good. All right, so Ann, the team has pulled together some info around your niche. We're going to talk about MLB and golf sponsorship. Did you have any idea that MLB actually sponsors some professional golfers?
Oh, I did not know that.
You did not know that?
No.
Actually, and one of their first ones was Cameron Young. I don't know if you follow the game. Cameron was a leader in the 22 PGA Championship, and so he has an MLB logo on his sleeve when he was playing the final round, and so which is a pretty cool sponsorship as well. If you like baseball, because it also comes with access to any MLB park in the country, so you can go to any game. I don't know if he has to wear his golf jersey with that or not, but yeah, this all started back in 2013. An agent had the idea, and he went and he found a tour pro, Sean Stefani. I don't know Sean. Are you familiar with Sean?
No.
I don't know if Sean is still touring. But anyway, he was one of the first, actually. And it's grown from there. Now, the tour's relationship with MLB runs even deeper than just player sponsorships. I'm going to ask you this. Here's your question.
Okay.
Which golfer's website does the MLB host and manage? So this is coming from the MLB Advanced Media. It's their league's digital production branch. They're responsible for hosting and managing this very popular and successful golfer's website. Who is it?
Oh, I'm gonna go. I have no idea, but I'm gonna go with Jordan Spieth.
Tiger Woods.
Really?
Yes.
I was gonna say Tiger, but that's way too obvious.
Since 2007,
really,
they have been managing his website.
Seems like he doesn't need them to manage.
Isn't
his website,
that crazy? Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea that they were even in that business and doing that, but there you go. I didn't know they were a competitor of mine. Yeah, so Tiger Woods. All right. Well, let's get back. And by the way, you did very well. I would not have known until I read this last night. I had no idea that they even got into that. So, so nice job. All right, well, let's get back into it.
Play ball.
There we go. Got to hit the button. All All right. So going from being a team member in a big firm to being the owner of your own CPA firm, what was that change like and the challenge of that?
Yeah, so I think I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs can relate that when you go out on your own, you have no idea what you don't know until you start. So I think that's good in some ways because if you knew all the things you didn't know before you did it, would you do it? I don't know. But so for me, it definitely has been, trying to learn because I think the other challenge for us is we're trying to do something completely different, right? So you can't even necessarily draw on other CPA firms or how, mild firms were set up, that you're really trying to do something very unique. And so, what I try to do is obviously like educate myself, listen to lots of podcasts and books and things like that. But, one of the biggest things for me is collaboration,
Mm.
that I really want our team to be made up of people that, have great ideas. And it really doesn't matter to me whether it's, what level or what position you are in the team, that I really want it to be, we're all in this for the sake of our clients. And I think for our organization, like you said, COVID was really the start of that. I mean, we were here earlier than that, but yeah, I mean, you're helping people, but you're not
Hmm.
really realizing you're helping people. And I think when COVID happened, it was like, no, like we're here for a mission, and our mission is to get people to get through this tough time and see the value in their business and make it better for the long term. And I think that has really helped us bring people on who have that shared mission, that it's not just a job or a 9 to 5 thing, that we want you to be passionate about what you do and here to make a difference every day.
So I have to be honest, your firm sounds like no other accounting firm that I've ever
It's true.
come
Which is
across.
good and bad. We had people that were like, you guys are crazy. We're like, I know.
Which
That's
is
okay.
terrific. And when you're going on and you're explaining, I think some of this, and I hear you talk about collaboration and the team pulling together and exchanging ideas. I mean, really, that is very much a culture that that you're looking for and building. Uh, with previous guests, we've talked a lot about culture and about nurturing culture. What are some things that you do? Maybe you don't do it intentionally, but I'm guessing you probably are. What are some of those intentional things that you're doing or looking for when you're building culture in your organization?
So I think for us, the challenge is making sure that our client is real. And I think that was definitely a lesson from working at my old firm. Like, here's a return, go do it. But who is this person, right? I'm looking at
Right.
all their personal information and I have no idea. So I think to me, one of the biggest things in culture is making the client real. So one of the things, like our marketing person had the great idea of, we have pictures on our wall of our clients and, any t-shirts, some t-shirts from their restaurants. And I think as much as we can make it real, because, we're remote, they're not all in our area geographically. So it's not like you can even say, go to their restaurant,
Right.
but the more that we can really make it real, I think the better.
That is a great idea. I love that idea. It actually made me think, God, we should do that. That is
It's
an
cool.
easy
They
thing.
love it. And it's
Yes.
great to see their pictures. And
Yeah,
yeah, it was
I
it was a
do. I
fun
love that idea.
project.
How do you attract people to your organization? I mean, there's so many small businesses right now that are really struggling finding staff and being able to do the level of service I think that they really want to do, and is challenging them to kind of approach their business in a different way, even with less. How do you attract kind of ideal candidate for your firm?
No, I mean, I think everybody is dealing with that same issue. I think for us, one of the things we've really just tried to do is make sure that whoever comes, you're not, you're not changing your expectation just because we're short staffed, right?
Mm.
Like at the end of the day, we have to find a way to have the same expectation, even if there's less applicants. I mean, I think the other part of that is, in some regards, the work has changed. And,
Hmm.
what we find, especially in, our world, is that you have people who have a certain expectation of what it means to be a bookkeeper or a tax accountant. And that's just never going to work in our business. Like, you've tried the times where you're like, oh, it's okay. What you realize is we have to be very clear from the beginning and not change our expectation for the role. But at the same time, understand how things have changed. Because I think in some cases for us, the role of even monthly accounting is so different from what it was 5 or 6 years ago, just with technology and client communication. It's so strange, even for our accounting staff. I mean, everyone has to have a Zoom camera and understand they're going to be on video. I
Right.
mean, before COVID, that would never have happened, right? So it's truly changing every role. And I think, I see this the same way in even our restaurant clients, where it's like, are you short-staffed because there truly is no labor, which is possible. I'm not saying that's not, but are you short-staffed because pay might be what they're looking for, or the role is different from what the guy down the street has? And so I think as much as we know labor shortage is a thing, I would also challenge people to look around and say, is it a labor shortage, or is it something in the job that I'm presenting is just not appealing? And,
Right.
I think what I tell our restaurant clients, which is true, and I don't think many people realize, is, they say inflation is probably 10%. For restaurant labor, it's 40%
Wow.
higher
Wow.
than it was a year ago.
That is
I
incredible.
mean, truly,
Sure.
because every person is paid $3 to $5 more than they were paid a year ago.
Mm.
So if you multiply that over your labor staff and really look at the impact on your business, I mean, that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
And so it's not just I need to hire new people. It's I really need to redefine what my labor staff is and shift, what is my expectation for my manager? Because it might not be the case that my manager can sit around and manage for 40 hours,
Mhm.
right? Like there may be some give and take that has to happen to make this work in what my customer is willing to spend, because we can't just go raise prices right now.
Right.
So I really think everybody is in a position where you have to just redefine your labor and what each role is.
And it's probably, just in thinking about our earlier comments, even and what I'm hearing you even describe is like, yeah, have to always be, and to use your term, be curious about your business and always looking, just like you did coming into the pandemic and having to re-examine the business and what it is that you're providing, or the service or the products that you're providing, and make changes so you can continue to be relevant and continue to stay in business. But in today's environment, this is what I'm hearing from you as well, is that you can't lose that. You've got to continue to examine labor shortage. Look internally. Is your process that you're looking for, is that job the same? Do you pay them the same? Does the job need to change? Does your internal operation and process need to change maybe differently, so that instead of having 10 people on a shift, maybe you can change things around the way that you were doing, and maybe you can get by with only 8 people on the shift
Right.
then, and not lose client or customer engagement or service. So
Exactly.
yeah, it's all good stuff. I wanted to move forward. So I love your direction in this. And I want to ask you this question, but before I get in thinking about future, I did want to give you a shout out on, you have a podcast as well that you host. I'm guessing you're the host, right?
Yes.
Called the Shotmaker Podcast. Why don't you give us a quick rundown? What is the Shotmaker? And I'm always curious when I talk with other podcasters, why did you start a podcast and why do you continue to do the podcast?
Yeah. So really was, the belief that how important mindset is. So I published a book earlier this year called Shotmaker, which really is talking about mindset as well as, tools that business owners need to know. And really, underlying goal of Shotmaker is for business owners to realize that, they're ultimately in control. And if you look at the analogy of the golfer, and we've all been there, anyone who plays golf, right? You had a terrible hole or whatever happened, but you're standing in front of your next shot. And that's really what we have to look at to be able to move forward and do the best we can with exactly what we have now to make our next decision our best decision. And so what I realized is it's a great concept, but there's a lot of cool discussions that you can have about mindset, and really not discussions that I'm going to have in an accounting world necessarily, but just something that I truly enjoy, exploring that idea of how people are able to have a good mindset in a tough situation or challenging environment. And so that really was the, idea of Shopmaker. We've had some great episodes. I think some people have really opened up in some great ways, and, just really giving entrepreneurs, another thing to think about, which is their mindset.
Oh, that's terrific. So do you have guests on the show that come on?
Oh, yeah. Some guests, usually do like 20, 30 minutes, but, some great ideas of just, I think it's an interesting time with entrepreneurs and, getting some people to really think and realize that their mindset is important.
Yeah. So people can go find it on all of the podcast platforms, I'm sure. All right. So moving, and by the way, I think you threw something out that not in my notes. Unbelievable. My research didn't pick up on this. You just published a book? Is that what you said? Called Shotmaker.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm going to find that. I'm going to put a link of it where people can go get it in our show notes, as well as other critical links to the Largo Group, largogroup.com, and have some very fun offers, free webinars on the website, and go and check some of those things out. Thinking down the road. So, being curious, right? I'm expecting, Anne, that you are asking questions, about your business, right? What is the next great thing that you're going to explore and roll out in the Largo Group?
So I think the one thing that we've discovered through, the crazy 2 years is that we truly love being part of our clients' journey. So, helping them not just where they are, but where they want to go. So I think the next thing for us is being more involved in that journey. We have a couple of things we're rolling out at the end of the year, but really focused on, if you really want to do more with us, really what is that more? And I think that more where we really add value is being able to see your dream and create a roadmap to make that dream a reality. And so that really is, sort of our next step.
Wow, I love that. I need to talk with you about that. That sounds great. Okay, Anne, so here we are. We're at the bottom of the ninth, and this is where I get to ask all of our grizzled veterans like you in the game. You've been on the bus a few years, riding around between ballparks here. What advice do you have for rookies in the game, those starting out in the business or those who already have their business and are looking for some guidance, some encouragement, words of wisdom?
I think the biggest piece of advice to someone who's just starting out is that it truly is a process. I love I don't know if you've read the Grant Cardone book of 10X, but, it's true. It's actually going to be 10 times harder than you think, right? Like that's what I took out of, like 10 times more work, 10 times harder, but then ultimately, like 10 times more rewarding. But I think we forget that. And we think, we have this business plan and it says we're going to make X amount. And then the first year we don't make X amount, we're the failure. Like I'm a jerk, I'm terrible. And that's not the case, right? Because we first have to look at, did we 10 times harder than we thought, right? Probably yes. Do I need to work 10 times harder? Maybe not necessarily you work, but we need to be smart in our decisions because it may require more work to get to that result. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to get there. And I think so many times business owners throw in the towel and they say, this isn't for me and I don't like it. And nobody likes failure. Nobody likes not living up to our expectation. But I really think if you look at your process, that you really are getting better every week, every year. And so we really have to look at this as not forever, but a point in time, right? We are here today, but we don't know what tomorrow will bring. So, what do we have to do today to get to where we want to go tomorrow? And I think for me, I'm so passionate about business owners realizing that they hold the key to the castle, right? Like nobody is going to come and give this to you, but no one is also going to come and take it away. And during COVID, my biggest thing against so many consultants was it was so easy to say, walk away, right? It was so easy to say, you want a restaurant in downtown Boston, like close it. Like, what do you do? Right. And that is not necessarily the answer because this is not today, this is a point in time, but that business could be a legacy business. It could be something that you own for the next generation. So yes, it's hard, but is walking away the answer, or is there something we can do differently to write our own path. And I think if business owners can forgive themselves for bad mistakes, which I love. Our first episode,
Right.
listen to any podcast episodes of Shotmaker. Our first episode, we had the owner of Barley Creek Brewing, who's one of my favorite clients, and he had a great quote about the sushi bar, right? Because he had tried to like open a sushi bar in part of a restaurant. It just failed. And he's like, everyone's got a sushi bar, right? Like everyone has it. It looked like a great idea, and then it turns out to be a terrible idea, and that's okay. But just hearing the way that he talked about it, like he's not still mad at himself over it. It's just like this joke of like, that was a bad decision. I'm going to go and I'm going to make another decision tomorrow.
Sure.
And I think the more that we can have that mindset of like, this isn't your last decision, right? So you're going to have more opportunities if you can just stay open and looking forward versus looking backward.
Right. Oh, that's a great mindset, right? and to track it back to golf even is like, listen, yeah, that was a bad shot. Most of my shots are. But, I'm only on the fourth hole, so there's a lot of game in front of me. So let's move on, right? Yeah, that's great. Great words. Thank you. Listen, Ann, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been so fun getting to know you. You're such a great, delightful, energetic person. It's great. Thank you so much for being on the show. Yeah. And we will have, as I stated, links to the Largo group in the show notes, as well as to the webinars that the Largo group is offering and some of the free courses there, plus Ann's book, The Shotmaker. We'll have a link to that in the show notes as well. And as we like to say, hey, folks, that's the ball game. Thanks for joining us today. And if you like our show, tell your friends, subscribe and review, and we'll see you around the ballpark. Running the Bases with Small Businesses is brought to you by 38 Digital Market, a digital marketing agency committed to client growth with lead generation, higher conversions, and increased sales. Connect with us today at 38digitalmarket.com.